And so the opening question that I ask every single one of my clients that I'm working with. So let's say I get hired and they say, Brandon, we want you to come and do a speaking engagement, or we want you to work with the team, or whatever it is. One of my first opening questions is always going to be,
The Workplace Therapist Show is sponsored by the Leadership Foundry. Bringing a cutting-edge, real-world approach to leadership development, the Leadership Foundry partners with each client organization to create a custom-tailored experience, virtual or in person, that combines innovative leadership content, world-class facilitators, and one-on-one coaching to ensure your leaders have everything they need to grow and thrive. To find out more and to design your one-of-a-kind program, visit myleadershipfoundry.com.
Hey everybody, today's one of those special shows that we do where we gather your questions and we debate them and we discuss them and we try and figure out how to resolve your workplace challenges. So it's one of our leadership therapy sessions. And so to join me on the call today, I have the amazing Whitney Mendoza and the wonderful Emily Smith.
All right.
So it's going to be the three of us today trying to take on some of these tricky situations that you all have sent us. So with that as kind of an opening, I don't know, Whitney, Emily, what you got?
All right. I'm going to kick us off. You ready for the first question, Brandon?
As ready as I'm ever going to be, Whitney.
All right, here we go. Dear workplace therapist, I work for an accounting firm which has had 10 full-time and several part-time CPAs whose our clients are typically small business owners. I'm part of the support team that interacts with the clients and assists the CPAs by gathering and sending information back and forth, handling electronic filing, etc. And because our clients are not necessarily tech savvy, we admins have to do a lot of phone calls with them and hand-holding as we walk them through our systems and processes. Most of the CPAs in the firm are respectful and appreciative of the work we admins do, but there are a few who are less than gracious, and one in particular who makes rude comments. The other day she said, "The problem with you admin staff is that you don't ever actually do anything that helps us do our job." At the time she said it, I was too taken aback to respond. My coworker and I have been fuming about her comment ever since. I'd really like to tell off this rude CPA, but that probably won't help me in the long run. I work hard at my job and find it infuriating that she doesn't appreciate it. How can we get her to see the work we're doing for her and the team? Signed, looking for a little recognition, or maybe I can't get no recognition. Playing in the background there.
Hey.
Okay, so interesting. Totally get it. So we've got this one particular, I don't know if the CPA is a partner in the firm or works for the firm, but we have a CPA who is not really showing appreciation. And this has kind of got this person a little bit, got their feathers ruffled a little bit. So, it's funny, as you were telling the story, my first reaction was, well, gosh, you should go to the managing partner and make a comment and say something about this and let them know because, that they should know about that. But I've changed my mind on that. I don't think that's actually the right first step. So I think we need to go back to something I've talked about before. When we're thinking about working with folks in the office, particularly managers or folks that we may be supporting, we don't want to think of them as our manager or leader. We always want to think about them as kind of our number one customer or client. Okay. So in this case, this person who's doing really important administrative work to kind of keep everything running, that her client or his client doesn't really get the value that they're bringing. So I think that's the makings of a really good conversation. I think this person should probably sit down with that CPA and, borrowing from our good friend, Randy Hain, say, there's been something that's been bothering me. Do I have permission to just have a good, honest conversation with you? And they'll say, sure. And say, the other day when you said, you don't feel like that we're really making your job easier, I would love to understand what you mean by that. And what would it look like for us to make your job easier? Because it's really important to me that I'm supporting you well, and you see the value that I'm trying to bring to you. That's important to me. So I think that would be a really productive way to address it, and maybe see if there's something positive that can come out of that. So that's my first thought. I'd be curious if you all have any different reactions to that.
Yeah, something that came to my mind is there a little bit of kill 'em with kindness element here too, Brandon, in the sense of it was funny because this conversation came out with another colleague of mine just a couple of days ago, where a lot of times when someone feels like they're doing too much or they're putting maybe more effort in than someone else's, that's where they feel like others are not, right? So is there a little bit of kill 'em with kindness in the sense of going out of their way, like this admin can go out of their way to thank this CPA for all that they do, and maybe open up their eyes to see they really do appreciate all that I'm doing, and maybe everyone else here is taking notice and doing more than I think they are?
I think
that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point, is just being willing, to extend some grace. There was just a tax filing deadline. So it's likely that CPA was under some stress to meet that deadline. So just acknowledging that, kind of what you're saying, acknowledging everybody is working hard. I think, and that needs to be a mutuality of respect for the work that we're doing. Also, I noticed in the story, her comment that my coworker and I have been fuming about it. I think that's another kind of challenge in workplaces and other places, is that we tend to dwell on the negative or make it worse by, call it out what it is, gossiping, and just that exacerbates the problem. We're not going to the person that we're having the actual problem with. We're kind of stirring the pot even further, rather than addressing it head on. So that's clear. That's just a typical workplace and life issue, I suppose. But it's something to notice.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's definitely, just stewing in it isn't going to make this more productive. I do think, to Whitney's point too, that, showing, giving the CPA kind of what you want in return is always a good strategy in life in general. If we want compassion, appreciation, we should put that out in the world. And I also think it's really, really important too that they have healthy conversations around expectations. Right. Because if that CPA is not seeing the admins as valuable, that needs to be clarified. And that is the makings for a really healthy conversation. Now, I will go back to my very first point that I pulled back on, and I'll reintroduce it. If that CPA just makes generally nasty comments, not just about, you're not adding value, but just generally nasty comments, then it is appropriate then to maybe go to the managing partner and say, hey, I just want to bring to your attention that this particular person over here has been, creating some tension in our office because they're making these kinds of comments. And I don't want to see that distract us from the work we're trying to do. So I just want to make you aware. I think that would be the right time to do that. But if it's just a one-off like this, I think, kindness, clarification, and then making sure you're not stewing in it, I think are all great strategies.
Well, and I liked also the way that you suggested having that conversation was, you came instead of on the offensive or maybe even defensive, but you came kind of with an attitude of no emotion. I'm sorry that you don't see our value here, because it's most important for me that you do. Instead of saying, I can't believe you don't see the value. You started from help, what is it that you would need to be able to see that our value, or where is it that we're missing the mark to provide you what you need? I think that's, just as you're saying, get that expectation out on the table. Where are we having this disconnect? Because I feel like I'm working really hard, and I want you to know that I am. So how can my work be valuable to you? I think that's really important.
Yeah.
There's no blame game being forced.
Yeah. To that point too, I also really like that that you're sharing the point of having that conversation, but after the fact, right? Like something that the questioner said was, I was too taken aback in the moment.
Mhm.
Sometimes that plays to our good, right? It's probably a good thing she didn't respond in the moment, because I was reading back over the quote, and it's, the problem with you admin staff is that you don't really do anything to help us do our job. Perhaps that was said in a moment of frustration, or maybe someone did drop the ball. And so everyone in the situation was probably frustrated. And so pausing, not responding, with a quick comment or something rude back in the moment, but yet waiting to have that conversation afterward to bring it up to that person to say, this happened. And, that kind of hurt me, or I don't really think it was addressed correctly. Let's talk about it. But later on is typically better.
Yeah, I think that's great. And something I just kind of took for granted, but and Whitney, you both make a good, important point. We want this conversation to not be emotional.
Mhm.
So wait till the emotion cools and plan it out, like script out what you're going to say. So you're saying it the way that you want to, that's in a spirit of help me understand versus I can't believe you ... Or you offended me, or whatever happens to be. It's the help me understand is going to be the spirit that you want to take this path. Yeah. Well, all right. So let's go to a next one.
I was annoyed when I provided a report to my boss the other day and was told that I had left out some important information. When I told her I hadn't realized that what she wanted, she told me I should have clarified the information with her. Basically, she said, you should have asked. In my defense, I felt like I had all the information I needed and didn't want to keep asking questions because I was pretty sure she would have been irritated by them, or she would have wondered if I was incompetent at my job. Then I had another experience with a team member who I was supposed to help on a project. When I arrived at our meeting with the information I'd gathered, he told me we needed more specific information that I hadn't realized. He didn't say it directly, but he hinted that this was something I should have asked more questions about. I see the pattern, but I don't know what to do about it. If it's my job to know what I'm supposed to do, don't questions imply that I don't know what I'm doing? I feel like I have a handle on the situation when I go into it, but I keep getting burned out. I suppose my question is, how do I ask better questions? Signed, just asking.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about this. When we hesitate to ask questions, it's because we're afraid of that vulnerability, because we don't know what they're going to do. They're going to say we're incompetent, or they're going to say, why are you asking me that question? Or it's a fear of vulnerability. So what we end up doing when we don't ask questions is we guess. And guessing, as you've heard me talk about before, I'm not a big fan of guessing as a workplace strategy, because we go to Vegas every time we guess, and sometimes we guess right, and then sometimes we guess wrong. And when we guess wrong, it costs us. So what I love about that particular example, Whitney, that you gave, was this person is seeing a pattern. They know they don't like to ask questions because it makes them feel uncomfortable. And so instead they guess, but it's starting to cost them their credibility, ironically enough. So the worst thing is happening. Their fear of what would happen to them is now happening to them. They're seen as not competent, right? Or not really capable of doing their job the way that others expect them to. Okay. So how do you fix this? How do you solve for this? So it's similar to our first question. Stop viewing these people as coworker or your boss. View them as customers or clients. And so the opening question that I ask every single one of my clients that I'm working with. So let's say I get hired and they say, Brandon, we want you to come and do a speaking engagement, or we want you to work with the team, or whatever it is. One of my first opening questions is always going to be, all right, let's say I finish that engagement. It's done. And everyone's sitting around, you included, and they say, wow, that was amazing success. What would amazing success look like? What would you either want to see, feel? Describe to me what success would look like. And that kind of question is a great way to get people to clearly state their expectations. Because if you have clear expectations, if I know what I'm shooting at, if I got the bullseye, the target, I'm going to hit it. And then inevitably, that's what happens. I meet their expectations and they say, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I said, well, yeah, because I did exactly what you told me you wanted me to do. I didn't guess. So what's missing in here is they're not asking the question about the end game, the outcome. Right. So what do you want to see? Or maybe, for example, like if they're delivering a report to a boss, you know what? So what? Help me understand a little bit about how you want to use this report. What's the intended purpose of the report? Because that would also help inform what needs to go into it. Mm-hmm. So they're not asking the fundamental question of what is the outcome that you're looking for, which could inform what needs to be included in it. If you're not getting enough out of that question alone, a second question you can ask is to say, so what would you not want to see out of this report? What would be things that would be not helpful or would make this piece of information I'm going to provide you not as useful for you? So you can go to the other side also, just as general categories, kind of what do you want to see? What do you not want to see? Just to help you kind of rein in a little bit of where you're going. But I think for me, that's a really important starting place for this person, is starting to just script some good questions that she or he can use every single time. So I always use that crystal ball question every single time, and every single time it works. So, just questions like that can make you more comfortable, because it's really all about helping you understand what others are expecting. So then you can start to target towards that. So that's my first cut at it. I'd be curious if either of you have any other thoughts or observations about this particular situation or scenario.
I had several things come to my mind going through this. Okay. Likely because I've been in the giving end of this. So the first thought, and
You've been the person that people ask questions to, is that what you mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is something that you probably should have known, right? Oh. So from that end, from the, I guess the leadership end, one of the questions that popped in my head is, how long have you been in this position? Because if you're new to the position, then it is expected that you're going to ask a lot of questions. So you've got a little bit of leeway there. If you've been in this position and maybe you've done several of these reports before, because a lot of what we do in our day-to-day of our jobs is repeatable, right? It might be different. Take Chick-fil-A. They make a Chick-fil-A sandwich. Maybe someone asks, for no pickles, but the essence of the Chick-fil-A sandwich is the same. It might be the same with these reports. And so if you've produced a numerous amount of these reports, it probably is expected that maybe that's something you should know by now. So that's a little hint there of how long exactly have you been doing this. I also really like, Brandon, something you always say is, what I think I'm hearing you say is.
Right.
So repeating back to the direct report, the leader, what they're saying that they are expecting, to clarify that this is what you want in this report or the product, whatever it is that I'm giving back to you.
Or something like, so it sounds like what you're looking for is blank, or
yes.
I totally get it. I totally get the not wanting to ask a bunch of questions to appear incompetent. I totally understand that. But also, as Brandon pointed out, the bad thing is this person is appearing incompetent. So there's a fine line that you have to walk. And I think it sounds also like it's one thing if the question is about the tactical, like how should I, and the other is the big picture. That is more the big picture is what it sounds like this person needs to get clarity on, perhaps. How they go about getting it. They sound fairly competent in being able to do that, but it's the biggest, it's the big picture, the why behind maybe that they're struggling with.
And I think you make a really good point, because we're not hearing them say, "Oh my gosh, these numbers are all wrong." Like we're hearing them say, "You didn't include certain things." So they're actually not questioning their ability to do the job. They're questioning, "I don't think you understood what was needed in this," and so they're not asking that big picture kind of question around what is the purpose of this, or how do you want to use this. One more thing that I was also thinking, Whitney, as you were talking about experience and backgrounds, sometimes we assume because we've done it a certain way before that that's the way this person wants it now.
Oh, that's good.
right? I've worked other places. I always did reports this way. So I just assume this is the way that this person wants to report here. Test those assumptions. And one last thing I'd also say, leaders in general, people in general are really, really horrible at stating their expectations. Horrible at this. So don't allow that voice to go in your head to say, I should have known. No, you shouldn't have known. I can guarantee they probably weren't clear. So you really got to make sure you reinforce that, because often people just expect others to just read their minds. Or maybe they've had these conversations with others throughout the years. So they just assume, oh, you should already know I've had this conversation before, but maybe they never had it with you. So it's always appropriate to ask the question around expectations. And sometimes those are moving targets, as the needs of an organization changes, sometimes needs of the work that we want also changes. So just test your assumptions. Don't always assume that what I did in the past is exactly what they want in the future. Just ask a few questions. And then I love the idea of replaying it back that you all mentioned. I think that's really, really important, because my experience is most of the time people say, yeah, that's exactly what I meant. But there's always those rare occasions when someone says, no, that's not at all what I meant. And I've replayed exactly what they said to me, word for word. And then they say, nope, that's not what I mean at all. Well, then we've got bigger issues, because you just told me that and I just replayed it back to you and you don't like it. So I don't know what it is about what you said to me that you don't like, but let's get at the root of this. So asking some more questions. One more last thing you can also do in situations like this, if you're really, really stuck, is to say, it's really important to me that I get you what you want. Can you provide me an example of a report or something you've gotten in the past, maybe from a colleague that really met your needs? It'd be great for me to not only see that, but maybe even talk to that person about how they approached it, so I am meeting your needs. Examples can also be helpful.
Yeah, I love that, having something to compare this new report to. I also like something that I like to do, especially if it's a new report or something new that I'm doing, is it's essentially a rough draft, right? Or the early workings of the report. Kind of plot out where everything is going to go, the information you're pulling in, and then show that to your boss before the actual final due date, right? Like, hey, this is what I've got going. Is there anything that you see missing? That gives you enough time to go back in, edit it, make an adjustment before the due date. Is this? I see you smiling, Brandon.
I'm smiling because you're talking about author editor, which of course is what you should do in this situation. We always author up, edit down, author up, edit down. So we're going to author something and present it to say, I'd love to get your thoughts around this. Is this the direction you want me to go in before I put in the extra work? I don't want to waste my time or your time. I want to make sure this is directionally correct. So a great conversation to have so they can react to it. I think that's great. So because again, people are not always great, or I could go even further and say, generally people are very poor about communicating their expectations. Even folks with really good verbal skills, which is a whole other category. There's people that just don't have good verbal skills. They can't articulate it, but folks that even can sometimes not put the right words around what they're asking for. Our friends in the creative space know this the best. When someone says, "Oh, just I'll know it when I see it," that's not particularly helpful to anybody. So asking a few clarifying questions, presenting some things for them to react to, fantastic. Yeah. Well, these were great questions this week. I really enjoyed it. I think we saw some patterns and themes in both of them. So Emily, Whitney, thank you for joining me today.